Hello students, get ready for today's economics class. Today we will start with the second part of the chapter number 3 of statistics for economics, that is census and sample methods of collection of data. Look at this mind map. Already we have done concept, suitability, merits and demerits of census method. Today we will start with the concept, suitability, merits and demerits of sample method. First, let's start with the sample method. What is sample method? Sample method is that method in which data is collected about the sample on a group of items taken from the population for examination and conclusions are drawn on their basis. For example, if there are 2000 students in a college, you are not getting information from all the 2000 students of that college, but you are selecting 200 students. You are getting information from that 200 students, and on the basis of that information you are preparing the report or you are drawing the conclusion. That is known as sample method. Or another example is, if we are going for a blood test, so few of the drops are enough to check the blood group, so that is again example of sample method. Suitability of the sample method. When sample method is suitable, when the size of population is very large. When population is very large, so many items are there of the population, so each and every item cannot be investigated, then sample method is suitable. We can select few of the items out of the total population or universe, and we can get the information from that items and conclusions can be drawn on the basis of the information. Very high degree of accuracy is not needed. Means when there is no need of very much right or accurate information, because each and every item is not studied or investigated in sample. So when there is no need of accuracy or very much right information, then sample method can be used. Third is intensive examination of diverse items is not required. When detailed information of all the items of the universe is not required, then sample method can be used. Next is when different units of the universe are broadly similar to each other. Means suppose you are going to slum area, poor households are living there, so they are very similar in their characteristics. So out of that all the households, you can select any few households to get the information, and on the basis of that information you can draw the conclusions. But if the characteristics are diverse of the items, like some are middle income families, some are high income families, then sample method cannot be useful. When characteristics are same of the items, then this method can be used. Next is merits of sample method. So what are the different merits of sample method? That first point is economical. Sample method is very economical because all the items are not selected, so there is not much money is required, manpower sources is not much required, so it is very economical or less costly. Second is time saving. Because only few of the items are selected for the investigation purpose, so it is very much time saving. Much time is not consumed for the investigation purpose. Third is investigation of the error. In the sample method, only few of the items are selected. As I said, out of 2000 students, only 200 students are selected. Okay, so if there is any mistake in the data collection, in the information collected from the items, so then we can check the mistake and we can rectify it. Fourth point is large investigation. When the investigation is large, when population is large, then this method is very much suitable. Then we cannot use the census method. Next is administrative convenience. Administrative convenience because the limited number of items are there, so it is very easy for the administrative department to handle the data. Next is more scientific. This method is very much scientific because only few items are selected, so we can get the extensive information from that few items. Each and every angle can be studied, so that the conclusion will be drawn will be more reliable. So these are the different points of merits of sample method: economical, time saving, identification of error, large investigations, administrative convenience, and more scientific. Now we will start with the demerits of the sample method. First is partial. The sample is selected by the investigator or enumerator. So the person who is selecting the sample can be partial. He can select the sample by his own wish, maybe rule out the selection of the sample rules. So this can lead to the wrong conclusions. Second point is wrong conclusion. If the sample will not be selected properly, so it cannot represent the diverse groups of the universe, so the information will be wrong and the conclusions that we draw on the basis of that information will not be reliable. Next is difficulty in selecting sample. So it is very difficult to select the sample because sampling techniques are required. The sample should be selected in the ways that represent the diverse groups. If the sample will not represent the diverse groups, the conclusions that we draw will be wrong. Next is difficulty in framing a sample. How many items should be there in a sample? It is very difficult. So it is very difficult to frame a sample. Next is specialized knowledge. To frame a sample, to select the sample, to select the method of sampling, to get the information, to draw the conclusion, it is not an easy task. So it can be done only by that person who is well versed with that techniques. But that persons are not easily available who have the knowledge of all the techniques of sampling. So these are the different points of demerits of the sampling. Next is essentials of a sample. So what are the essentials of a sample? First is representative. When any sample is selected, it must represent the characteristics of the entire universe or population. Suppose if you're going to slum area, you are selecting the households. So that household should represent the entire area or all the households of that area. Next is independent. All the units of sample must be independent of each other. In other words, inclusion of one item in the sample should not be dependent on the inclusion of other item in the sample. Next is homogeneity. If more than one sample is used or selected from the universe, then all the samples, like two samples, should be homogeneous or same. Adequacy. The number of items in the sample should be adequate, means the sample should not be very small in size. If the sample will be very small in size, it cannot represent the diverse groups or characteristics of the universe, and we cannot get adequate information, and conclusions that will be drawn on the basis of the information will not be reliable. So these are the 4 points of essential of a sample: representative, independent, homogeneity, and adequacy. Next is learning by doing. These are the 3 questions of learning by doing. Which method, census or sample, would you prefer if you are to study economic conditions of the people in your area? Next is, would you opt for a census method? If you are to assess performance of economics teacher in your school, give reasons. Third is, if your teacher is to assess IQ level of the students in your class, would a sample of 10 students out of 50 be enough to get the good results? So these are the 3 questions that will be done by the students. So students, we have done today sample, suitability of sample method, merits of sample method, demerits of sample methods, and essentials of a sample. I hope all the topics are clear to you. Thank you.